Moving to the last technical session for the day today, and we have a speaker from a very renowned organization with us. So we have a session on the EV charging uh, technologies. So we have learned in the previous session about how many types of charging infrastructure are there, what are the various type of charging stations and technologies. We will look at some of these now in detail. So we have with us Mr. Bidyut Majumdar from Siemens. Mr. Bidyut has a passion for creating sustainable energy and e-mobility ecosystems by harnessing the power of digitalization IoT. He is currently working with Siemens as head of business development for future grids and head of digitalization for distribution systems and the renewable energy market. He is responsible for business development of solar PV, EV charging infrastructure, energy storage solutions, intelligent energy systems, and turnkey projects for power distribution across industrial and infrastructure segments in India and Middle East. He has more than 14 years of experience in project management, business development, product lifecycle management, energy storage, electrical HT systems. So without much delay, I would now like to invite Mr. Bidyut Majumdar to take us through the topic of EV charging infrastructure.
Thank you, Dhruv. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So let me share the screen. Can you confirm the visibility of the screen?
It's visible. It's visible.
So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the session. Due to paucity of time, without much delay, I will straight dive into the topics. And this session will be a purely technical one, and wherein I will take you through the various aspects of the EV charging infrastructure, what we have. So before getting into the technical details, so just introduction of what EV charging is. So essentially, it is basically to charge the batteries in the electric vehicle. Now, as we know, for pure electric vehicles, the energy of the for driving the vehicle comes from the stored energy in the batteries. And although there are measures available to recover the kinetic energy from the vehicles, but still to charge up the batteries to a decent level, we would need some kind of a external charging mechanism. That's where the EV charging ecosystem is growing. So there are majorly three avenues of charging a vehicle. The most visible and the most prominent one is the conductive charging, the one you see on the left, wherein we have two modes, which is AC and DC charging. The second is one called a swapping. It is strictly not a charging of the EV per se, but it's a swapping of a fully charged battery with an empty battery once you're done with the charge in the particular battery. So this is, you'll have seen some of these swapping charging stations in some cities, which basically are more popular in the 2- and 3-wheeler segments. We will get to the details of the swapping in a bit. And the third one is the inductive charging, or so-called the wireless charging. As the name suggests, in wireless charging, there is no physical connection between the vehicle and the charger. Like the principles of electromagnetic induction apply here. And although this is a very attractive kind of solution, but it's still in the process of R&D, and the prototypes are available, but it's still not a mainstay commercial charging method. So with this introduction, I will get into the basic classification of nomenclature which you will come across, namely level 1, level 2, DC fast charging, etc. So in level 1, it is basically all vehicles which are equipped with an onboard charger that is plugged into the normal power outlet. That's what we get in our homes and offices, the 5 to 15 amps type. So this offers the least amount of power, and consequently takes the maximum time to charge, which is okay for any kind of residential charging thing where you are okay for a charge time for more than 8 to 10 hours. Level 2 charging is a type of charging where the rated power is a bit more, and thereby reducing the time of charging a bit. And this also has the option of using off-board charger or the AC charger, which will come in a bit. And the third is the level of DC fast charging, in which the direct current is put connected to the vehicle. And this is the fast charging method, and we will come to it as how the AC and DC charging differs and what are the differences. And there are a few nomenclatures which are specific to India. As we have heard in the last sessions, there is a Bharat EV Charger AC001 and DC001 standards, which are it was taken by, I mean, DHI and AIS standards have implemented these protocols here. And the two DC charging standards which are very prevalent in India are CCS and SHAdeMO. So these are the classifications which you generally come across within DC. So CCS, SHAdeMO, and DC001. These are the nomenclatures you'll come across. And when for a charging infrastructure to work, you would need what? I mean, the charger first, then the power to run those, to supply to these chargers, and an operator to operate those chargers and to connect to a cloud-based backend called CMS. So these are a few of the organizations involved in manufacturing chargers or operating chargers and providing cloud-based services to manage the chargers. This is by no means an exhaustive list. It's a growing list for India, and more organizations are getting into management, manufacturing, and cloud-based monitoring of the chargers. Yeah, this is where I will just talk a bit about the battery swapping. So in swapping, what essentially happens is that the vehicle owner procures the vehicle without the battery, which is, I mean, as you would imagine, in a EV, the maximum cost is of battery. So essentially what is being done is that the battery itself, the source of energy, is being managed by the energy operator, and the consumer just buys the vehicle without the batteries, and the charged batteries are installed in the vehicle from a battery swapping station. So it's like going to a petrol pump. Instead of filling a petrol or diesel, you would just go to a swapping station and fix a fully charged battery in the vehicle. And then once your driving is done and the battery is almost discharged, you will go back again to the battery swapping station to just replace your used battery with a fully charged one again. And this is, I mean, the best example to visualize this is that of a LPG gas cylinder, wherein you do not own the cylinder per se. You just basically rent it out, and once you are done using the gas, you again replace it with a new one. So similar logic is there behind battery swapping. And this, although it is attractive and seemingly very easy method, there is a lot of standardization which is going on. And as I mentioned earlier, it is more and more prevalent in the two-wheeler and three-wheeler segment, because as you would imagine, the battery sizes are lesser, thereby more manageable. For larger vehicles, there is a standardization going on as to as you can imagine, if you have to use a battery swapping technology, the type, the size of the battery should be standardized across vehicles. And this is where the standardization thing is kind of going on. And also the swapping stations should be able to cater to various types of vehicles, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers and all. And when you go on for higher capacities of vehicles, because of the high weights of the batteries, you would require some mechanized equipment to handle those insertion and removal of batteries. So this is, I mean, as you can see, the technical operation is what I clearly mentioned to you. In the commercial analysis, it can be really beneficial once the markets are standardized and there is more consensus amongst the OEMs, vehicle OEMs, to kind of standardize the battery types. So this is about swapping. With this, I will move to the the most popular version of EV conductive charging, which is the plug-in based chargers. Now, what does a EV charging infrastructure comprise of? So, as we can imagine, you would require a battery charging system, which basically can power the battery. And we all know that battery gives out DC, and so it can be also charged by DC, which means that no matter what source of power you have to convert it into DC to charge a battery. And that's where we have two types of charging, which you would generally encounter. One is AC charging and DC charging. Now, when you talk of AC charging, I'll come to that slide first. When you talk of AC charging, you directly connect the vehicle to a wall socket or a AC charger, so-called AC charger. And in that case, the onboard charger inside the vehicle converts the AC to DC, and thereby the battery is charged. Yeah, and you can imagine, since in a vehicle the space is limited, the size of the onboard charger is also limited by design. That's why you can't have high power onboard chargers, and to make the high power onboard chargers, you have to use more space and dedicate more weight to it. That's why there is a limitation on the onboard charging capacities. That's why AC charging cannot use the full capacity of the battery current intake. That's why it is more or less known as slow charge. Whereas in DC charging, what happens is that this conversion happens inside the charger itself. Thereby, it bypasses any onboard charger inside the vehicle. So directly the DC goes into the vehicle, and hence you can achieve much higher currents to the given to the battery of the vehicle. Thereby, and since the charging time is directly proportional to the amount of current which you give in, so higher current will take the least time to charge the vehicle. So this is the basic terminology and difference between AC and DC charging. And an AC charger or any DC charger charging station, for example, will have various elements such as protection systems, because once we connect these systems to the grid, it is exposed to the various faults or transients which the grid may have. So you would require surge arresters, circuit breakers, etc. inside the charger. And then, yeah, you will have the, in case of DC chargers, you'll have rectification modules, and you'll have the charge controllers. So the so-called SECC, supply equipment charge controllers. Then you will have the power factor correction equipment and the HMIs for accessing the chargers. So these are the various elements of the chargers which you would find typically. And the connectivity to the backend is also required, because the charge point operator will get a lot of data about the usage of the charger, analytics in order to bill the customers, and also provide the monthly reports of the chargers. So all the connectivity to the backend, either by the 4G or Wi-Fi, Ethernet, these are the elements which are part of the charging infrastructure. And the power source. So the chargers typically, I mean, all chargers, they take in power by normal AC grid supply, which is either the single phase 230 volts or the 3-phase 415 volts. So irrespective of the type of the charger, be it AC or DC, the power supply source is from the grid. Of course, the grid could be the normal grid, what we get from the distribution utility, or it can be a solarized grid with a solar PV panel, and if required, sometimes a storage as well. So solar plus storage could be the source of supply. But electrically speaking, the chargers get input at AC, either single phase or 3-phase. And since we talk of DC charging right from say 25 kilowatts onwards to hundreds of kilowatts, nowadays you get also 300 kilowatts, 400 kilowatts as well. You would definitely need to plan the grid capacity in such a way. So if you have a charging station with many number of chargers, and if just the grid connectivity is sufficiently not planned, it would mean trouble for the grid operator. So that's why when you set up a charging station, the consultancy should be done as to what is the available grid power and what is the expected power which will be taken up by these chargers, and thereby the grid capacity should be planned by installing new transformers or connecting to HT line, etc. And of course, with the more and more focus on renewables, it would be a microgrid containing solar PV, batteries, fuel cells, etc., which ultimately will generate the power at single phase 230 or three phase 415 volts. And for DC chargers, as I was mentioning, that the conversion from AC to DC happens inside the charger. There will be a rectification module inside the charger, and this is basically a rectifier plus a DC-DC converter, because all different types of vehicles request DC power at different DC voltages. So you can't have a fixed rectification, I mean a fixed DC output voltage, because if there is a vehicle which takes in a power at 300 volts and you have a rectifier which gives the 500 volt output, you can't match or you can't supply the power to that vehicle. That's why the rectification modules, the power modules as they are called, have a rectifier circuit, and after that a DC-DC converter circuit which matches the output voltage of the charger to the input voltage request from the vehicle. Yeah. These modules you will find inside the chargers. This we already discussed, the difference between AC and DC. I was mentioning about the output being matched to the input. So this is done by a communication between the vehicle and the charger. So this is where you require specialized equipment called EV chargers, because these EV chargers are designed to have a communication channel with the vehicle, which basically talks to the controller inside the vehicle, and then the two equipments, the charger and the vehicle, communicate, and then the vehicle communicates its battery state of charge, the current which it can take, the voltage at which it will take in the current, etc. So this is called a handshake, and it happens once the plug is connected to the charger and the car of the vehicle. The method of communication is defined as per standards. So in AC charging and DC charging, there are various protocols which typically have all these standards mentioned. So the most popular ones in India which we follow is the type 2 AC connector with the IEC 61851, or India has officially launched the standard for vehicles called IS 17017, and which has the definitions of the communication as well. So this communication is very important, and there are dedicated pins in the sockets to establish the communication between the vehicle and the charger. Now, this is the so-called architecture of chargers. As you can see, the left block is the charging station, and which gets the input from the supply, grid supply, and for AC charging, the direct AC is fed to the vehicle, wherein the rectification happens inside the vehicle, and then the battery is given the power, either at constant current or constant voltage. So typically from 20% SOC to 80% state of charge of the battery, the constant current is given, after which there is a constant voltage phase, which goes on for stabilization and cell balancing, and that's how the charging process is completed. And in DC charging, the rectification happens inside the charging station, and then the DC is directly given to the vehicle's BMS and the battery, and all the charging controlling happens through the BMS. So all the batteries come along with the battery management system, which gets the information of the state of health of each cell inside the battery, what is the temperature, what is the charging rate, etc. And that the feedback is given to the vehicle's controller, which in turn gets communicated to the charging station. So these are the key elements inside the electrical elements inside the charging stations. So just for information, the controller inside the vehicle is called the Vehicle Charge Control Unit, or VCCU, and the controller inside the charging station is known as SECC, Supply Equipment Charge Controller. So essentially, when I spoke about communication, it's about communication between these two controllers. And once the establishing of communication happens, then the power is allowed to flow from the charger to the vehicle. As you would imagine, and I also mentioned earlier, there are various protective and safety features which the charging stations are equipped with. These are few of them. Basically, to ensure the safety of the personnel and the safety of the network where these are charged, are connected. So, for example, the earth fault monitoring, or the circuit breaking, overcurrent, overprotection, kind of all faults are taken care of. And then externally, there is a recommendation in some cases of fire protection and kind of a lockout feature so that unauthorized use is not there. All the chargers do have an authentication method, by the way, so that only authorized users with any method, it could be RFID cards, it could be one-time passwords, or a QR code scanning. By any one of these methods, only they can operate the charger. And it's not the case that if there's a charger on the you see, and you just take the plug and connect to the vehicle, the charging will not start. So you have to go through these authentication processes, which first identify the customer, thereby give the command to the backend saying that, okay, now the user is authenticated and the charging power can be given. So that's when the electrical power will be connected. So all these safety features are fully defined in the various standards, and that's why the previous speaker also was mentioning that the charging stations are certified as per certain norms, either tested by ICAT or ARAI or any external IEC recognized labs, so that these functionalities of safety and etc. are ascertained in the charger. I will touch upon a topic of the connectors. So like we have in our mobile phones, different types of connectors, USB, USB-C, Apple connector and all. Even in vehicles, you would find some multiple types of connectors. So, but now more or less there is, it has narrowed down to just 2 or 3 types of connectors. Mainly what we see in the upcoming vehicles and the latest released vehicles are for AC. We have the IEC 62196 Type 2, commonly referred to as Type 2 AC connector. And for DC, it is the CCS connector. So these two are the types of connectors which are more prevalent. And the vehicles sold in India earlier also have the Bharat DC 001 and AC 001 types of protocols, which use the industrial socket, and there is also one Shadimo connector, which is Japanese connector. Now, when you have a vehicle, you get along with the vehicle this kind of a two-way connector. So one end of which can connect to the car, and the other end can connect to the socket. So this is what I was talking about, the Type 2 connector. Type 1 is for the UL markets, basically the USA and those areas which use the UL protocols, and Type 2 is what we use here. But nowadays, mostly you'll find the AC charging stations coming along with a fixed Type 2 cable, so that whenever a vehicle comes in, that plug can be directly connected to the vehicle. So on the vehicle side, this is what I was talking of. This is the Type 2 connector. As you can see, the earlier one, the 3.3 to 7 kilowatts, these sockets have 5 pins, and the Type 2 has 7 pins. So in the 7-pin socket, there are 3 pins for the 3 phases. There's a protective earth, the neutral, and these 2 on the top are the communication pins. So one is called a CP and the other is called a PP, basically communications pilot and proximity pilot. So these pins establish the connection of the vehicle's controller with the charger's charge controller. And that's when the information exchange and handshake happens. Yeah, so this is the same type 2 again. And yeah, for DC, you will come across these 2 types. This on the left is a SHAdeMO connector. SHAdeMO is basically a Japanese standard, which was, there's an organization called SHAdeMO organization, which releases the standards for these. And the most prominent vehicle which has SHAdeMO is the Nissan Leaf. However, the most popular type of DC connection which we are seeing in Indian market is the CCS. And the top part of the CCS connector is same as the type 2 connector, as you can see here also. The only addition being the bottom 2 large pins of DC, so DC plus, DC minus. So what so essentially the vehicle will have this kind of a connector as an inlet, and it can be either connected to an AC charger by the type 2 connector or the DC charger by the CCS connector. So the vehicle will have only one socket for in case of a CCS combo connector. Whereas if it's a SHAdeMO car, you will have one connector for SHAdeMO and one separate connector for type 2 AC. Yeah, so these are the main types of connectors you would come across. So to keep it simple, most of the cars, upcoming cars, the ones which have been recently launched also, the Tata Nexon, even Tata has launched a new Tigor EV, and MG ZDVS, the Mercedes EQC, Audi e-tron, they all have the CCS combo type connector in them. Yeah, this is we all already seen as just the visualization of the same thing which I mentioned, the onboard charger versus rectification inside the DC charger. And in AC charging, so you can just imagine the AC charger as being a distribution board normal, because whatever input you give, the same output is given to the car, with the addition of the communication between the charger and the vehicle, and the protective functions which the charger has. Essentially, from an electrical point of view, it's just a distribution kind of equipment. In DC, you get the normal grid power as AC as an input, and you get variable DC as output. So there are chargers with as high range of 10 to 1000 volt DC also available, which basically can be used for charging different types of vehicles, 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, and even electric buses, because typically the cars, electric cars, they work at around the 300 to 500 volts range, and the buses work anywhere between the 600 to 800 volts range. And now many companies are focusing on even higher voltage ranges to get more power inside the vehicle for higher ranges. And the power is simple calculation from our high school. It's voltage times current. That's the power you get it. And for example, 250 volt, 200 amps current, 250 volt DC voltage will give the 150 kilowatt output. And that's how the DC charging power is calculated. One note, whenever you come across the rating of a charger, those are always the maximum ratings. It is not the case that if you have a 150 kilowatt charger and you connect it to a vehicle, the power will instantly be 150 kilowatts. As I mentioned earlier, the power requested by the vehicle will only be supplied by the charger. So even a 150 kilowatt charger could supply even say 50 kilowatts if that is the demand from the vehicle. And this is enabled by the power electronics inside the chargers, which only supply the amount of power and voltage requested by the vehicle. Similarly, for AC charging for single phase and 3-phase, this is the method of the power calculation. So for example, a 16 amps single phase charger will give a 3.7 kilowatt output. 32 amps will give a 7 kilowatt output. And similarly, for a 400 three-phase current three-phase system, 32 amps current will give a output of 22 kilowatts. This you probably will come across more often or frequently, because 22 kilowatts is very easily implementable. That's a maximum capacity which is easily implementable with the available distribution networks in buildings or commercial complexes and all. So in typical residential applications, the 7 kilowatt power is more common nowadays. And for commercial, industrial, and public charging areas, the power of 22 kilowatts is more popular. Even in case of AC charging, the power requested by the vehicle depends on the onboard charger capacity of the vehicle. So again, it's not the case that a 22 kilowatt charger will only give 22 kilowatt output. It's the maximum power which we are talking in this case. Yeah. And the battery capacity, as we all know, depends on the size, the type, the chemistry of the batteries. So we know that all the vehicles have lithium-ion batteries which are being used, and there are various chemistries available. NMC or nickel manganese cobalt or lithium iron phosphate. These are the more popular ones, and there is a lot of R&D happening globally to make the batteries more and more powerful and more reliable, because it's a battery which will define how far the vehicle can go with the single charge. And the power calculations are rather simple, and the distance, although this is a very simplistic calculation I've shown, the actual design uses a lot of optimization techniques, and because after a certain charge state of charge, there is a non-linearity also which comes into the batteries, which needs to be calculated. But in general, this is the way. So if a battery capacity, the battery size is 30 kilowatts, and the efficiency of the vehicle is 10 kilowatts per 100 kilometers, the range is around the 300 kilometers. This is an example. This is how the ranges are usually calculated. Now coming to the types of chargers which are there in the market. So we have the AC chargers, and normally you will come across the term as wall box, AC wall box, and the freestanding AC chargers. So these chargers are connected to the AC network and can directly, they are used for the applications like enterprise dealerships, car dealerships, or buildings, parking areas inside commercial buildings like shopping malls, or even some commercial complexes, residential use in single or multi homes, apartments, etc., and the city and town street parking. So these AC chargers, they are as per the usage of these 4 use cases. Whereas DC chargers, which typically are of much higher capacities and very capital intensive as well as power intensive, they are used for the use cases like highway transit charging. So it's like when you go from between 2 cities, you would require one stop to top up your vehicle. That's where you would go to a highway transit charging station, wait there for half an hour, 45 minutes, and top up your battery to say 60–80%. And then you would also require DC chargers in this truck stops or gas stations where you have heavy vehicles coming in. DC chargers you will definitely find in electric bus depots, because electric buses have a fixed route which they need to follow over the period of the day, and they have a time constraint that between evening and early morning, you will have many buses which need to be fully charged before the next day's shift. So all the electric bus depots will have this DC charging, because they need to meet the schedules of the transport authority. You'll also find DC chargers in LCV fleets. LCVs, light commercial vehicles, or truck terminals and logistics depots. This is where you would typically find DC chargers. Technology or the specification wise, AC chargers will come with either a socket or a plug like this, fixed plug with type 2 connector, or a socket with a type 2 which can take in a type 2 connector, and they will have the authentication either by RFID, or as I mentioned earlier, even a QR code which can be scanned on the charger, or an OTP based authentication. Then you have this OCPP as a protocol. So this, yeah, I mentioned about the protocol between charger and the vehicle, that's ISO 15118. Then you have a protocol for communication of the charger and the backend cloud system. That protocol is known as OCPP, or Open Charge Point Protocol. It is a protocol which is globally used for communication between the charger and the charge point management systems. Basically, it gives all the information to the backend or the cloud system using standard messaging, which is defined in the OCPP protocol, which is basically the JSON type data, which is sent from the charger, which has all the information regarding the charging session, how much time the vehicle was connected, how much power was given to the vehicle, who is the authentication key is given, the amount to be charged, etc. All will be calculated at the charger and given to the back. You also have metering in these chargers, and most of the chargers now also come with a remote firmware upgradation facility, wherein the controller software can be upgraded from the cloud itself. And these AC chargers also have the communication protocol as per the ISO 15118 or the type 2 ISO 17017. And the DC chargers are bigger. They are they take in higher power. So typically, you would find DC chargers from as low as 25 kilowatt wall box to 150 or even 200 or 300 kilowatt chargers. And DC chargers will have the power modules, rectifier modules, as I mentioned earlier, and they could come along with either a combination of a CCS SHDIMO output, or it could be both CCS or both SHDIMO outputs. And again, the authentication will be there, and extra as an additional safety method, you may have even the emergency stop button, which may be used in case of some emergency. And then DC chargers usually also have an option for an AC output, in which case a 22 kilowatt, either a socket or a plug can be given. And all these chargers, since they will be used in outdoors, usually come with the IP54 rating and IK10 mechanical protection. You will have the HMIs, or the touchscreens on the chargers, which gives the information on the charging session, what is the power being transferred, or the state of charge of the vehicle, how much time is remaining, etc. And also it can be used for running some commercial or customized ads when the charging station is idle. And you will typically also find the LEDs indicating the status of the charger. As you can see in this picture, this green LED indicates that the charger is available and can be used for charging. So these are typical types of features which you will find in AC and DC chargers. Now, in the previous session, we were looking at the topics for which we need to consider while putting up a charging station. So as was mentioned, and again, it's very logical that to connect something which is has a particular load, you need to ensure that there is a sufficient capacity of the grid available in that area. So first of all, the energy and the grid connection and the energy available in the network should be estimated. And depending on the type of charging station, whether it's a bus depot, whether it's a car fleet or a residential tower coming up, the type and the components inside the grid substation needs to be upgraded if required. The key areas are the type of utilization. So what type of utilization will be there in the charging station? As I was mentioning, whether it's a public charging network where you will have a steady stream of vehicles coming and charging, or a residential area where you will have a fixed number of vehicles of identified owners who will be just charging whenever they're connected. So utilization, the availability of space, how you integrate with the grid. So this is the these are the basic questions, and then number of charging stations. So CP is you may come across this term, charge points, charging plugs or charge points. So each DC charger, for example, can have more than one charge point. So charging plugs. So number of charging plugs and power per charging plug will be an important metric to identify the actual energy consumption or power which will need to be dedicated to that charging station. And the charging strategy, whether it will be a fast charging station or a slow charging station, that will be an important metric to define the grid characteristics. And then obviously how you will supply that power to that charging station. Whether you will only use the available grid connection, or if there is no available grid connection, where will you put up a substation which can then be connected to a high voltage line, 11 kV or 33 kV, whatever, and then the operational and service aspects. So these are the considerations for setting up a charging station, and these are the typical areas and the stakeholders which are involved. So it's the city administration, the distribution utility. In case of the bus and truck fleets, those stations where they will be parked at, the CPO. CPO is a very important stakeholder in the EV charging infrastructure ecosystem, and they will actually operate and maintain the charger over its entire lifetime, also collecting the data and giving out services to the customers by even mobile apps. So nowadays, it's very easy for EV charging user to just go on to the mobile app of these various CPOs, reserve a charging station also, and then get the vehicle charged. Yeah, this gives an idea of the speed of the charging and the consideration where these will be important, the number and the power per charge point. And the time required greatly depends on this metric. Higher the power, lesser is the time, and that's where the use case needs to be identified. So DC fast charging, as I was mentioning earlier, typically you will find on highways. So also the MOP guideline also mentions that the highways connecting the major cities should have at least a charging station at every 25 kilometers. So these are the main considerations we need to take in. And for public charging areas, there is a MOHUA guideline which says that all new buildings should have at least 20% of the parking spaces dedicated as to be dedicated as EV parking base. So these policies are coming up where there is impetus given to adoption or at least installation of charging stations, so that people see the chargers and get confidence to buy vehicles. So government and the policymakers are working a lot towards that. And yeah, the guidelines for the charging station is I mentioned just a visualization here, and there needs to be a discussion and also a plan regarding the operational characteristics and how will you take care of any disturbance in case of, say, disruption in power supply, etc. Then do you want to make it future proof in terms of the type of charges you are putting up? The previous session we saw technologies like V2G. So there's a lot of research happening in various areas, V2G, V2X, V2H kind of thing. So do you want that implemented already? Then how will you ensure that the energy efficiency is maintained? What is the policy regarding the green energy usage in that charging station? So these are considerations which needs to be ascertained before putting up a charging station. And of course, depending on the target vehicle type, special considerations will be applicable. So for depot charging, as I was mentioning, right, and if there is a fleet, if it's an LCV fleet or any other car fleet, where you have a specific number of vehicles which need to be charged in a specific time frame, there obviously you will come across the optimization problems of the cost of electricity versus the state of charge which need to be maintained for each vehicle. So these optimizations will come into the picture. And this is where the choice of charging infrastructure will depend. So this is what I was mentioning, like what's the user profile, whether it's say this is a random city kind of parking scenario where the number of vehicles follow no fixed pattern, whereas for depots you will find a fixed pattern where in the morning and the night times you have all the buses in the depots, and during afternoon in between the shift you will see the buses coming for opportunity charging. So these considerations will need to be looked at, and this forms a part of a study which there are organizations which do these kinds of consultancies and studies. And the charging strategy, whether fast or slow, will determine the actual amount of peak load which needs to be designed for that particular charging station, which will form the basis for the substation design and the load which needs to be taken from the grid. And good part is there can be a lot of simulations done before even actually putting up a station, just by simulating different types of charging scenarios. So and also another important aspect is the tariff structure, because the grid tariff, it depends of course on states, but in some cases you will also find a time of use based tariff, in which case you'll have a peak tariff for a certain time during the day, and low tariffs during the other times. So taking that into consideration will help in optimizing the cost you incur for operations. So the OPEX considerations can or should also take into account this tariff, and whether or not you will use some on-site generation like rooftop solar or rooftop solar plus energy storage. That will also help to reduce the OPEX. Of course, the CapEx and OPEX overall needs to be looked at. And third is, which I already mentioned, is the reliable grid connection. So this, what is also possible to do is that if there is a city map or a local map available, the existing grid distribution network can be superimposed on that map, and the various charging stations where they are planned, they can all be simulated in those places, and the stress on the grid can be modeled, which will give an idea of which substations and which transformers needs to be upgraded if required, or if any new lines need to be constructed, or new substations or compact substations needs to be installed, can all be got from these kinds of studies before implementing the charges actually. Then we have also now all the smartness in the devices available now with the IoT which is coming up. So all these devices can communicate about the status to cloud, and that data can be used in different ways by the charge point operators and the other stakeholders, by providing say even power management service, energy management services, payment services. I mean, it's like connecting your mobile wallets or any digital payment methods to your charging account, and also different types of analytics which could be useful for the user and also the charge point operator. Yeah, so This is talking about the challenges which are currently available, but which is clearly going towards a direction where there is a standardization happening between the protocols. As I mentioned, you will see most of the new vehicles coming up with just 2 or 3 protocols which are being used currently. Sometimes a lot of people have questions regarding the safety and the challenges with respect to the power and what will happen if there is a shock, etc. So this is where the safety standards are playing a major role, and all the organizations which are involved in this sector are following all these safety protocols. So whenever there is a charger built, one of these protocols is followed, which defines the method of communication between the vehicle and the charger, and that communication ensures that the risks of safety are completely minimized. And yeah, another question which comes a lot is the speed of charging. How much time will it take to charge a vehicle? So first and foremost, the time taken to charge any vehicle is a function of the vehicle's design itself. Because if you keep the charging power fixed, the speed at which a vehicle will charge will depend on, in case of AC charging, the onboard charges capacity. In case of DC charging, the onboard battery type, the BMS, and also the internal wiring between the inlet of the vehicle and the actual battery. Because as you can imagine, the current will obviously flow through the wiring harnesses and the conductors inside the vehicle. So if there is a limitation of current in that also, there could be some differences in the charging time, which is calculated versus the actual realized time. Yeah, but another topic is that typical average electric car user will use charging either at home or the place of work, because that is the place, these are the places where the maximum amount of parking will be happening, and thereby that's the reason that why AC chargers are will be more and more in number. Because when you buy a car now, next time, you will most of the car companies are bundling a charger along with the vehicle, AC charger along with the vehicle, and it can be fixed at your residence or place of work. And in any case, your vehicle will be parked at these locations for more than 5 to 6 hours, which is sufficient for a full charge on a power level of say 7.4 single phase or 22 kilowatts 3-phase. The fast charging will only be required where you would want to go for a long journey where you will top up. So the questions of the fast charging affecting the battery life is of course valid, but the number of times a typical car will be charged by a DC fast charger will be much less for any significant effect to happen. Yeah, this is for the integration of the chargers with the building management system. So there are also already chargers available which can, apart from being communicable on the OCPP to the cloud, can also be communicated to the building management system. So via, it could be, for example, via Modbus, thereby giving the complete visibility to the building operator or the energy operator to see how much energy is being consumed by all these charging stations. In the future, as I was mentioning about the government ministry notification that a certain number, 20% of the charging or the parking space shall be electrified, we will just see more and more chargers in our buildings around us, be it the residential complexes or office spaces, etc. So yeah, I know I have went ahead a bit fast, but this was in the interest of time. I hand it over to Dhruv now for a discussion if there's any question. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidyut. That was a wonderful session, and a lot of things to learn from Siemens based on their portfolio and their experience and expertise in this area. So there are a couple of questions. So one, for example, is around a term that we used early on in this session around SAE charging. So a participant asks, what is SAE performance?
Okay, SAE is Society of Automobile Engineering. So those people, they have they had some standards on the efficiency or the operations of chargers. So it is mostly not applicable for India.
Okay. So the other question is, do buildings require significant changes to their existing distribution infrastructure if they have to integrate EV charging inside their parking spaces?
Yeah, the simple answer will be no, because for buildings, most of the times the AC charges will be used, and that's where the normal distribution boards which are already available in the buildings can be used. So, for example, if there is an existing building, they will have the distribution boards in various locations which feed either the lights or any other loads. If there is a capacity available in those boards already, it's just as simple as connecting one of the MCB feeders or MCCB feeders to the charger. If there is no extra capacity available, then it will be a simple addition of one say compact substation of say 1 MVA size or 2 MVA size, and connect it to the medium voltage line which the building gets, and after that it can be those charges can be supplied from that substation.
Okay. So the last question is, for example, we've seen prices of vehicles coming down primarily due to the prices of batteries coming down, and there's an expectation in another decade or so we will see the prices coming down to half their current values. So on the other side, the vehicle ecosystem prices are coming downwards. Now the question is, do we expect a similar movement in the charging infrastructure costs as well, or are they supposed to be, do we foresee them to be remaining flat over the years or maybe going up over the years?
I hope the charging infrastructure components are clear, and if you clearly look at, I'll take for example DC. AC charges are, I pretty much expect them to be flat, because AC charges just have the MCBs and protected devices and a few electronics which are not power converters basically. But for DC chargers, the main cost drivers are the power modules, which are based on the silicon or silicon carbide kind of technology, which are usually imported from outside. So if, and you may have seen this in the media also, if you have some semiconductor manufacturing happening in India, there may be some cost reduction in the future, but I would not expect the similar trajectory as for batteries and EVs in the charging ecosystem.
All right. So with that, we have come to the end of the session. And if there are any more questions, I would request everybody to send them to us over email, and we will have them answered. So Vidyut, I would like to thank you a lot on behalf of UK Pact and Green Tree Global for being able to take time and being able to attend this session for us. And it was a wonderfully, informative session, and we look forward to having you on board for the other sessions in the series as well.
My pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Vidyut.